Tired of your foam tombstones constantly falling over or blowing down the street and looking for the best way to mount them to the ground? Well, I've got the video for you.
Hauntcast
For hunting and Halloween fanatics. Every spooky season, I see thousands of posts on social media and the forums asking the age-old question. Do coffins have a lifetime guarantee? No, dingus. What is the best way to secure foam tombstones to the ground so they don't fall over every time Grandma sneezes? So here are my top 5 ways to mount foam tombstones to the ground. Number 5. Cut a 1/8 inch thick metal rod into 12-inch sections. Heat up one end of the rod with a blowtorch, gas grill, or whatever is handy. Make sure that you are wearing the appropriate gloves if you're holding the rod in your hand. An oven mitt will do the job. Once hot, slide into the foam about 6 inches. The holes you're making should be exactly 6 inches apart. Also make sure that the rod is completely horizontal when inserting into the foam, as to not poke the end out of the face of the tombstone. Then hammer the rods into the ground, exactly 6 inches apart. Match up the holes to the rods and slide the tombstone onto the rods. If you experience extremely high winds in October, you may want to go for a 24-inch long rod, but I find that 12 inches is usually enough. That's what she said! Number 4. If your tombstones are too thin for the last option, then cut out a piece of 1.5 to 2 inch thick EPS foam that's about 6 to 8 inches wide and about 6 inches tall, and glue to the back of the tombstone. I prefer to use Great Stuff door and window as adhesive. Use whatever you'd like. Drill 2 holes about 4 inches apart. Place the tombstone on the ground. Insert either a 1/4 inch by 12 inch long metal rod or a threaded rod, or even a piece of rebar, whichever you prefer. Hammer rods into the ground, and I know I shouldn't have to say this, however, then place the tombstone onto the rods. Number 3. Cut a 1/2 inch thick piece of plywood into these dimensions, 6 inches tall by about 8 inches wide. You can go the full width of the tombstone. I did in this video, but I would recommend going slightly smaller than the width of the tombstone. As this tombstone is 12 inches wide, I measured in 3 inches from both sides and made a mark, as I want the stakes to be secured to the back 6 inches apart. Glue to the back with your adhesive of choice. Once again, I use Great Stuff foam. Press the plywood onto the Great Stuff, lift it up, press it down, lift it up, press it down again, before clamping it into place. Cut 2 12-inch long pieces of 1x1 or 1x2 wood. On one end of the wood, cut in a 45-degree angle, as this will be nailed into the ground. Drill 2 pilot holes into the 1x1 or 1x2, roughly about 4 inches apart. Hammer both stakes into the ground 6 inches deep and 6 inches apart. Finally, screw in 4 1¼ inch screws to secure the stakes to the plywood. Number 2. Similar to our last option, cut out a 1/2 inch thick piece of plywood that's at least 6 inches tall by just a few inches smaller than the back of the width of the tombstone. But this time, instead of using 1x1 stakes, we're going to secure a 1/2 inch piece of PVC pipe to the back. Find the center of the tombstone, then measure 3 inches to the left and then 3 inches to the right, so you'll have 6 inches between the 2 pipes. I'm using 1/2 inch pipe straps to secure the PVC to the plywood. Space them out about 4 inches apart. Place the 6 inch long 1/2 inch PVC pipe onto the plywood. Then place the pipe straps and proceed to secure them to the plywood with 3/4 inch screws. Place your tombstones into position, slide 12-inch long 1/2 inch rebar into the PVC pipes, then hammer the rebar until 6 inches into the ground. Number 1. Find the center of the tombstone, then measure 3 inches to the left and 3 inches to the right and mark. From that mark, using a square, Draw a line 6 inches long. Line up the center of the 1/2-inch PVC pipe to the mark that you just made. Then draw a line on both sides of the pipe the full length. We will need to remove the foam in between these two lines. I am using a router with a 3/4 inch bit. If I had a 1-inch bit, that would be perfect, but I didn't. Make sure that your router bit is set for only a 1/2-inch depth. You can go deeper if you have an 1.5 to 2 inch thick piece of foam, but if it's a 1-inch, don't go more than a 1/2 inch deep. Proceed to router out a dado in the foam. I used a square to help guide the router. I guess you could use a hot knife to carve out the foam, but I would just use a router. Vacuum off the shavings before adding glue. Once again, I used Great Stuff for my adhesive. Insert the pipe. I would recommend weighting or clamping down the pipe in place so it won't move. Hammer 12-inch long pieces of rebar 6 inches deep into the ground and 6 inches apart. And then slide the tombstone onto the rebar. I personally use number 1 for the majority of the stones in the Village Maya Cemetery. I've had nor'easters, hurricanes, and all varieties of nature's douchebaggery thrown my way here in the Northeast, and my stones are still standing tall. Haunt on, my fiends.
I'm going now. Heaven help you.
Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you won't miss any haunt content that is dead ahead.